Well, hello friends, and welcome back to browser hacking. Today we are going to take a look at crashing tabs in the multi-process browser because we do have multi-process support in our web browser in Serenity, but it's not quite finished yet. So it's not the default. By default, we're running everything in one process, but we want to get to a point where the multi-process mode is the default mode, obviously, because it has huge security benefits, stability benefits, and so on. And especially now, since I was able to write a browser exploit earlier this week, I'm increasingly motivated to continue work on this and get the multi-process engine to a place where we can just switch it on by default. So one of the big things that doesn't work yet is if we open Google here in a tab, then it crashes the whole browser. And that's actually because Google has a text box where you type your search query, and the multiprocess mode does not support text input yet. So that's why we're crashing. But as you'll notice, we're crashing the whole browser, not just the tab with google.com in it. And this is because of a flaw in the multiprocess architecture where the browser process assumes that the web content processes will never crash, which is a really silly assumption since this is kind of the point of the multiprocess mode, to allow the web content processes to crash and still like gracefully recover from that, right? So today we are going to work on the multiprocess browser and make it handle situations where a tab crashes. And instead of taking down the whole browser, we'll just display like a little message, right? That this tab has crashed. And then you can reload it and be on your way. So that should take us a huge step forward towards making this the default. Because then it's just a handful of bugs before we can switch. So let me show you the reason why this falls apart so easily. I guess we can just look at any crash that we had. So we can see here that this is a crash in the web content process, and it's not really relevant why it crashes. It's just the fact that it does crash. The interesting part is, why does the browser crash? And does it even say anything? Browser, it just says that it should die. Yeah. So essentially what happens when the web content process crashes is that there's a socket that they use to talk to each other, the browser and the web content process. And from the browser's perspective, that socket will just disconnect, right? And that's how we learn that the web content process crashed. So in our case, that would be in the out of process web view class. This is the GUI widget that paints the out of process content on screen in the UI. So this thing actually runs in the browser process, not in the web content process. And it has this thing here called a web content client. And this guy connects to a web content service. So essentially, we need a way for this thing to gracefully die. So let's see what we're actually doing with it, first of all. So I guess we're exposing it through this getter here. And we have various situations where we just call client, post message, something or other. So basically, all of the communication from the browser to the web content process is asynchronous. The browser will never make a synchronous request to the web content process, because making the UI block on a response from the web content process, that would just be a recipe for hangs and stalls. So we take care to have a strictly asynchronous API, but even so, this client could become disconnected, right? So what happens when it gets disconnected is that it inherits from IPC server connection, because it is a connection to a server. And in server connection, we'll see here that it has a virtual void die. And by default, if you don't override this function, it will just exit the process. And basically, this is what's happening now when the web content process crashes. So if we don't want our app to exit, we indeed have to override this function. So step one right now is that we're just going to override this function in our web content client. So virtual void die. And I think we'll do something like this. Okay. So step one is to just handle the die situation, right? Web content process crashed. So we'll start by just doing that and seeing what happens. If we can at least not kill the browser. So we go to Google and, oh wait, I forgot to start it in multi-process mode. Okay, so now you can see here that it's just calling die over and over, apparently. It's a bit weird. I guess we are not, we don't normally just print something and return in that function, so I guess it will be called again for whatever reason. Let's see who calls this. Shutdown calls die, okay. And also drain messages from peer. Calls die if we get EOF. Okay, so if we're draining from an open socket and we get EOF, then we call die. Sure. So I think either way, what we want to do here is essentially we want to notify, because the web content client is the helper object in the UI process that talks to the web content process, but this is just a helper for the out-of-process web view. So we want to essentially notify the out-of-process web view that this client has become disconnected from a crashed web content process, and the best thing to do at this point is to just create a new client and start over. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a web content process crash or something like that. Yeah. And then we will simply call that thing when we die. Okay. And then in the out of process web view, when we set this thing up, where do we create the client? Okay, so we create the client in the constructor. So I think we're going to move that out to a helper. Connect to client, let's say, or create client. Yeah, so we'll put that here, and then this can go down here, create client. And we want to make sure to set up this callback. And what are we going to do when the thing crashes? We are going to create a new client, basically, which will just tear this thing down. And I think, just to be careful, we're just going to make sure that we remove the old client before constructing a new one. Just because that it kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies to have the old one sitting around. I don't know why, just a little bit of caution. And so then we have all of these getters that all of these people who are calling client this or that, but all of the state that we have in the web view essentially can probably stay, although let's see what's... We should probably forget our bitmaps and stuff. We need to get rid of all of those. So maybe we can do something like this actually, client state. Client state, because then I was thinking that we could just like default initialize a new one of these things. So then that would be something like client state. Boom. It's a little bit heavy-handed, but I kind of like it, because then as long as we put things in that struct, then we don't forget to initialize it. And then we can sort of rename all of these things. Remove the m underscore, because that's what we normally do for this type of stuff. Yeah, I kind of like that. Okay, so we will simply do this in a bunch of places. And the bitmap ID allocator, I guess we can restart that if we crash. Oh yeah, we already do because of what I just did. Okay, never mind. That I avoided a problem even without realizing it. So that's good. Okay, and then we are just putting this on all of these boys. And here, let's just have a little assertion to move any crash a little sooner, just to make it a bit more understandable. And here we go. Okay, so I need to remember to start in the multiprocess mode. Okay, so we immediately fail with this assertion that we have a client. Because what? I never call create client, do I? Yeah. All right. So we need to call create client in the constructor. All right, and then go to a crashy page. So now we have a crashed web content process indeed. But yeah, so now this is kind of in a goofy state here, but the browser didn't die, so that's really awesome. And if we open another page, everything works fine. Go to a crashy page. Once again, we are in a goofy state. Crash dialog pops up. Getting some other unrelated problems here. I think that's a different crash. But even so, it's a totally different crash in event handling. But look, it didn't crash the browser, so that's fantastic. Already making great progress. So let's see. Now we just want to make sure that the UI sort of tells you that something went wrong, right? So we want to display maybe an error page of some kind. So we have like an error HTML somewhere here. Load error page. Wonder if we could simply call that thing. Wait, is that public API even? It's not, but we could make it. How about we try that? That's kind of cool. kind of like that. So we make a new process. Immediately when the old one dies, we'll make a new process. And how about we just try that here? So load, oh wait, how the heck do I get an error page? I need to invent an IPC message for this. So web content server, IPC, we have load URL, load HTML. You know what, let's just load some HTML for now. So we'll type out an error page here. So crashed. This is very fancy. Okay, maybe even an H1. And URL. Oh, what should be the URL of this? I guess we can just have the URL that you tried to open. Let's see how that goes. Okay, that's pretty cool. And we even get our little error page, although it didn't. Scroll bar looks goof, but I think that's like an unrelated issue. Like scroll bars don't really behave correctly in the outer process web view yet, but it also didn't immediately paint, right? It just shows up as white first, and then if I, what do I need to do to make it show up? Resize. Okay. Yeah, so that needs to be improved. Let's see, I guess, do we need to set viewport rect? I guess that's something we would normally do. So previously what would happen is you would construct an outer process web view, and we would create a client which spawns a process, and we send the system theme to the web content process so that he has all the colors and everything. And then immediately we would get a resize event. So that would cause us to send set viewport rect and then allocate backing store bitmaps. So I think after we crash, we need to sort of do a dummy resize just to make sure that we set the viewport, we send over the viewport rect and allocate bitmaps. Yes, I think we need to factor this out into a helper function here. Notify server about resize, let's say, and then event. Wait, do we have the size? Do we need that? We can probably just say this. Notify server about resize. Yeah, so server in this case is the web content server, right? Like the service process that is doing work for us. We call it the server. And then we have notify server did, which is what the server notifications come into us and they end up here. So maybe notify server about resize is a bit of a clashy name. Maybe let's just say handle resize for now. And then we'll do the same thing here. So handle resize after a crash, just to make sure that that information gets sent over. Okay. Oh. Okay. Yeah, the flickering is a bug in the outer process web view. Again, like I was saying, it does have some bugs, so it's not quite ready for prime time, but it is getting there. And today we're taking a huge step by making it actually worth using, you know, because now it has a benefit that the single process browser just can't give us, which is graceful crash handling. This is very neat. Okay, so should we should we make this HTML a little bit neater? We can make a little bit of an effort here, right? So this this could move into a file or something. I don't know, but for now it seems okay to do it here. So what do you want to put, like the URL there maybe? Am I doing this in a stupid way? What do I don't remember what other browsers normally say. Like maybe we'll just say something like crashed colon in the title. Doesn't have to be super fancy. What is that? It's an MRL. Okay, so toString. And then we'll put something like web content, web page crashed. Yeah, and then we'll just put the URL here. I think that's okay. This will be neat. So maybe web page crashed on, and then we put like the host. I don't know. I'm kind of coming up with what to do here slowly, but we'll figure it out. So the web page on Ahref, then we put the link. Also, I don't know why I'm not using the format string stuff. Has crashed. Feel free to try again. Yeah. This is all I wanted to achieve, really. Yeah, we can definitely do better than this. It's just we have to start somewhere, so this is where we're starting. Let's try this out. Maybe this is not ideal. We'll see what it looks like. Web page, yeah. So I think that's kind of cool. And then if you want, you can click on this link to try again. And then it crashes again, which is sad for you, but that's what happens. And you can also reload, I think. Yes, you can reload, takes you back here. Also, of course, we don't have like very good visual feedback right now that a load is taking place. Like we don't have a throbber or progress bar, really anything other than maybe some message in the status bar. So that's something we should look into improving also. But still, this seems to work. It's very, very cool. So I like it. And then this thing is usually pretty easy to make crash. Yes, it still works. Okay, so for file URLs, that doesn't really work that well. Maybe we should only say web page crashed. Web page crashed. Host, let's see, if we have a non-empty host, we can do a little bit of finessing here. So on okay, that's nice. Remove the on. Yeah. Okay. I think this will be good enough. So if we do have a host, then we show the host. But if we have a crash in a file URL, then we crash the whole browser. Dang it. Okay, why did we crash the browser? Browser. Out of process web view client. So he's calling create client. Wait. So we're in handle resize, asking for the client, and the client has already failed us. Wait, what? So did we lose the client immediately? That's really sad if that happens. So let's assert here, like client. Also, I guess we should probably like disconnect the thing here so we don't get called multiple times. Although that part is a little iffy, but let's see. Okay, how do I make it crash? Like that. Why does the browser crash? Create client. Do you have an assertion or something for me? So that's the web content, sure, but why does the browser die? Out of process web view, create client. There's something here that is a little bit not quite right. Okay, yeah, so he didn't like when I overwrite this thing while we're in the callback. I guess that's fair. So that crashes it, and then can you just reload? Bloop. That works. That's kind of awesome, actually, that you can just reload. And yeah, so we can definitely spruce this page up and make it cool and everything, but just having something is awesome. Awesome. You can reload the page to try again. Yeah, and let's maybe put a little BR there, something like that. Gotta tweak those things. Okay, so this is it's clearly not perfect, but I think it's strong enough. Strong enough to call it a thing. So let's do commit. So we didn't end up needing that load error page thing that I changed. So let's actually restore that. But the rest of the changes we will simply keep. libweb plus, no, just libweb, okay. Handle, web content process crashes gracefully. The out of process web view will now detect web content process crashes, disconnections, and simply create a new web content process. In its place. We also generate a little error page with a link to the crashing URL, so you can reload and try again. This is a huge step forward for out-of-process WebView, since it now has a feature that in-process WebView can never replicate. Yes. Awesome. So this is definitely awesome. I don't know why I didn't work on this sooner. I guess I've just been running around all kinds of other things. I mean, there's so much stuff to do, but now we're actually making some real progress here on the multiprocess browser architecture. This is clearly the way of the future, and I think we're not very far away from enabling this as the default browser mode. I think very, very soon. So that's going to be huge for browser security, because it means that if an attacker takes control of the browser through a web page, they really only have control of a web content process, which is much more tightly sandboxed than the browser, and does not have access to any of our user account or our home directory and things like that. So it'll be very interesting to see how that tightens things up. Anyway, this will be the end of today's video, I think. So if you made it this far, then I thank you for watching, for hanging out, and I hope that you saw something interesting. I'm particularly happy with these changes because I don't know, it's just really cool to make progress on the multiprocess browser. It's a neat thing. Like, I remember when like big major browsers were single process, and multiprocess seemed like such a big thing, right? And it took many years for people to, or for the teams working on browsers to get them to a good place. And I'm really happy to make progress on that here. It's going to be a big improvement. Anyway, thank you very much for hanging out, and I guess I'll see you next time. Bye.